The dog ran to and barked continuously at a grave, surprising everyone. Everyone knew that the dog's ability was extremely outstanding. After digging it up, they discovered a terrifying plot about to happen. The moonlight softly shines down across the expanse of Anantha Hills police station. It was past midnight, and the only sounds were the distant cry of seagulls drifting on the ocean breeze and the hushed whistle of wind through tall pine trees. Rocky, a sturdy German Shepherd police dog, was on his nightly patrol. His manager had been called away for another emergency, leaving Rocky to accompany another police officer on his routine night patrol of the area. But this night was anything but routine. Without warning, Rocky stopped, ears pricked forward, and ran straight into Anantha Hills Cemetery. He let out a low growl, then a series of urgent barks. No amount of coaxing or gentle tugging on his leash could pull him away from that spot. Finally, the officer radioed in the unusual behavior. Everyone around knew and trusted Rocky's instincts. He had an uncanny ability to sense threat. Within minutes, Nora Carter arrived. She was not just any officer. She was the one who had trained Rocky from a pup. As a top female police officer in the force, Nora had seen her share of unusual cases, but she never ignored the keen senses of her canine partner. She found Rocky still barking, paws scrabbling at the soil near the grave's edge. The name on the headstone was blurred by years of erosion, and there seemed nothing obviously suspicious about it. Yet, Rocky refused to budge. Crouching down, Nora patted Rocky, trying to calm him. "All right, buddy," she said softly. "What have you found?" Even before she finished speaking, Rocky's nose pressed into the soil, urging her to look closer. His whimpers and persistent pawing made Nora's heart race. Something was definitely off. As Nora was examining the site, she glimpsed headlights flickering through the iron bars of the cemetery's perimeter fence. 2 black cars, sedans of unidentifiable make, drove slowly past the gates. Moments later, they circled back. Nora stood, eyes narrowed, a feeling of tension in her head. It wasn't typical to see vehicles prowling around the cemetery at this hour, let alone the same one circling more than once. She radioed dispatch to report suspicious activity. "I need backup at Anantha Hills. Something's not right here." Before reinforcements arrived, Frank, the aging caretaker of the cemetery, hurried over, keys jangling at his hip. His face looked pale in the moonlight, and his breath came in quick, uneasy puffs, as though he'd just sprinted from the far side of the grounds. He shakily held up a small wallet with no papers inside. The outside was torn, and it looked like someone had deliberately placed it near disturbed ground. "I found this near the grave," he said, voice low. Rocky sniffed the wallet and growled, the hackles on his neck bristling. A sudden gust of wind rustled the nearby trees, causing Frank to glance over his shoulder anxiously. He thought he heard the faint crunch of footsteps on gravel, but saw nothing in the shadows. "It's as if someone wanted him to come here," Frank continued, beads of sweat forming along his temples, despite the night's chill. Nora swept her flashlight over the area, noticing partial footprints on the damp grass that vanished into the darkness beyond the headstones. She knelt to examine them, her pulse quickening at the thought of an intruder lurking nearby. "I've been working here for 20 years, Frank added, swallowing hard, "and I've never seen anything like this." Overhead, a distant rumble of thunder sounded, as if nature itself sensed the gathering tension. Moments later, the forensic team arrived, floodlights illuminating the eerie sight. They began to process the ground around the grave, scanning it with specialized equipment. Within minutes, one forensic specialist turned to Nora. "This plot was dug up recently. The soil layering is off and the coffin inside isn't registered with the cemetery's records." Nora felt her pulse quicken. An illegal theft. She directed the team to proceed with caution and alerted the station that they might have uncovered a crime scene. When the team carefully pried open the coffin lid, gasps erupted. Inside, lay a young man, barely alive, his breaths shallow and labored. His clothes were expensive, his hair neat. A person goes in to check for life. One of the paramedics shouted for oxygen. They placed an oxygen mask over his face and lifted him carefully onto a stretcher. Despite the shock of the discovery, Nora did a quick search of the coffin. Tucked in a compartment was an elegant leather bag containing a laptop and a small external hard drive. Nora grabbed them, suspecting they could be critical evidence. She then followed the paramedics, ensuring the unknown victim made it to the ambulance. At the hospital, the victim's identity quickly came to light. The bag inside the coffin and his hospital records revealed him to be Dylan Sanders, the son of Henry Sanders, the renowned tech mogul and CEO of a cybersecurity conglomerate. The name caused a stir among the officers. Henry Sanders had contracts with the government and multiple Fortune 500 companies. I wonder if this has something to do with Henry's corporate dealings, Nora speculated. The possibility of a kidnapping or ransom scenario loomed large, yet the fact that Dylan had been left in an unmarked grave, barely clinging to life, suggested something more sinister. Back at the precinct, Nora and a digital forensics expert named Marcus huddled in a cramped tech lab, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as they analyzed the laptop and external hard drive found in the coffin. The air was thick with tension. Every keystroke echoed in the silence as file after file of data opened on the large monitor. They revealed not just random snippets of code, but meticulously organized schematics of banking systems, firewall bypass instructions, and a staggering collection of stolen credentials. Half-eaten fast food containers and empty coffee cups cluttered nearby desks, testaments to the urgency of the team's around-the-clock efforts. While Marcus cross-referenced digital fingerprints with known hacking collectives, Nora noticed a folder labeled Phase 0, which, once opened, displayed a blueprint detailing how to infiltrate the core of the U.S. financial infrastructure, complete with timelines, target vulnerabilities, and insider contacts. A chill ran down her spine at its sophistication. It looked less like a typical ransom plan and more like an impending economic catastrophe. Suddenly, a phone on the desk buzzed, revealing an incoming call from a federal liaison demanding an update. Marcus muted the ringtone, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he unearthed yet another folder marked Emergency Protocol Override, containing reams of encryption codes capable of bypassing even top-tier security systems. Nora's heart sank at the sheer magnitude of the conspiracy unfolding before them. "This isn't just a kidnapping," she managed. "This looks like an orchestrated attack on the banking system. They must immediately report to their superiors." Meanwhile, back at Anantha Hills, Rocky was still circling the gravesite. The dog seemed restless, as though urging the forensics team to investigate further. After rechecking cemetery records with Frank, they stumbled upon something they had missed: a trapdoor beneath a partially collapsed mausoleum nearby. Dust and debris had concealed the entrance. When they opened it, a blast of cold, damp air rushed straight at them. A narrow flight of steps led into the darkness. Rocky stood at the entrance, ears forward, tail stiff, ready to lead the way. Several officers made their way down into the passage, flashlights cutting through the shadows. The narrow tunnel eventually led to the old chapel attached to the cemetery grounds. Inside one of the chapel's hidden alcoves, they found an advanced surveillance setup. Cameras, motion sensors, and transmission devices pointed toward various parts of the cemetery. Nora arrived on the scene, quickly deducing that whoever orchestrated Dylan's burial had been watching every move from this vantage point. "So that explains the black cars," she muttered. "They were waiting for a moment to strike or escape." Working with the gathered evidence, the investigators began piecing together the bigger picture. A name surfaced in encrypted files on the laptop: the Anonymous, a notorious cybercriminal collective rumored to be behind large-scale data breaches. The files indicated that the Anonymous had infiltrated Henry Sanders' company network. With insider access to proprietary cybersecurity systems, they aimed to launch a massive attack on the U.S. financial market. Frank rubbed his forehead in disbelief as he listened. "I've noticed strangers lingering around the cemetery these past few weeks," he confessed, guilt edging into his voice. "I never imagined they'd be criminals planning something this big." As the police delved deeper into the passageways, they found that the underground tunnels stretched far beyond the cemetery's boundaries. The labyrinth connected to old drainage systems and possibly even led to other buildings in town. This revelation meant the infiltration could be more extensive and more dangerous than initially feared. Maps uncovered in the hidden chapel indicated key points where the Anonymous could tap into major data lines. "They're piggybacking on existing infrastructure," Nora concluded. "No wonder they stayed under everyone's radar." Farther inside the tunnels, the investigative team discovered a secret control room. At first glance, it resembled a high-tech bunker, complete with banks of monitors, blinking servers, and a wall of documents pinned under red string. A digital countdown timer flashed ominously on a central screen, indicating that the next phase of the attack was imminent. Nora took a series of photos to send to the precinct. "We need to figure out how to stop this," she said firmly. Her eyes darted from the timer to the myriad lines of code scrolling on a nearby monitor. They could be launching this at any moment. In the caretaker's small office back above ground, Frank was finally able to share more. He produced a faded blueprint of the cemetery and an extensive log of every maintenance activity and visitor over the last few months. "I was suspicious when I saw unfamiliar faces poking around certain mausoleums," he explained. "But I never imagined they were building a hidden base." The puzzle pieces started to align, and it became clear that Frank's intimate knowledge of Anantha Hills could be the key to unearthing all of the Anonymous secret passageways. His willingness to help came just in time. With the new details from Frank's logs and the data recovered from the laptop, the police learned the horrifying scope of the plan. The Anonymous intended to unleash an advanced AI algorithm, originally developed by Henry Sanders' tech firm, to cripple the U.S. financial sector. This AIS had the capability to bypass typical firewalls, exploit zero-day vulnerabilities, and create catastrophic damage within seconds. Information immediately reported to superiors. As Nora read through the files, she muttered, "They're planning to manipulate stock values, freeze bank assets, and create national panic, all in one coordinated strike." They gathered together to come up with a plan to solve the problem immediately. First, they had to ensure Frank's safety. His knowledge of the tunnels was irreplaceable. Intelligence suggested Frank might be targeted by the Anonymous. Late that night, a specialized SWAT team moved in to protect him, just as the suspects attempted to kidnap him from his office. The SWAT team quickly thwarted the attempted kidnapping, freeing Frank and securing more documents. Among those rescued items were additional schematics showing how the Anonymous planned to physically access critical data junctions below ground. Meanwhile, the Anonymous tried to execute their exit strategy. Using black SUVs, they intended to flee through a series of rarely used tunnel exits. However, the police, guided by Frank's knowledge, systematically blocked each route. Roadblocks were set up at major intersections. Officers sealed off manhole covers that connected to the underground channels. Helicopters scanned the city's outskirts with infrared sensors, searching for hidden vehicles. Cornered with no easy exit, the Anonymous had no choice but to make a stand. "They're pinned down in the main tunnel," crackled a voice over Nora's radio. The tension was palpable. On the technological front, Dylan Sanders had regained enough strength to speak briefly with his father, Henry. Lying in a hospital bed, he insisted on helping the effort to neutralize the malicious AI he had discovered in the coffin. With remote assistance from Henry's top cybersecurity specialists, Dylan accessed the critical part of the program. Henry joined from a secure terminal at police headquarters, guiding his son through the labyrinthine code. Line by line, they dismantled the malicious components. "We need to pull the kill switch sequence at the same time," Henry instructed. With a final keystroke, they neutralized the code segments preparing to launch the attack. Outside the hospital window, the city lights shone like beacons of hope. The immediate digital threat was averted. In the days that followed, the successful takedown of the Anonymous resonated across the nation's news networks. Experts marveled at the scale of the planned cyber attack and breathed a collective sigh of relief that it had been foiled in time. This incident exposed the vulnerability of existing cybersecurity measures and prompted immediate reforms in how banks, stock exchanges, and even government agencies safeguarded their data. Henry Sanders, grateful for the rescue of his son, funneled significant resources into new, more robust security protocols. Simultaneously, law enforcement agencies began sharing intelligence at an unprecedented rate, forging a united front against future cyber threats. Amid the accolades and policy changes, one hero stood out in the public eye: Rocky, the German shepherd who wouldn't stop barking at an unremarkable grave. It was Rocky's intuition that had led to the grave's discovery and ultimately uncovered the Anonymous' entire operation. The city council organized a ceremony at Anantha Hills Cemetery, where officials presented Rocky with an honorary medal. Families gathered, children petted Rocky's ears, and reporters snapped pictures as Nora knelt beside her loyal partner. "You did it, boy," she said, ruffling his fur. In the background, Frank looked on with pride, finally feeling at peace, knowing the area he had grown attached to was out of danger. Dylan Sanders, still wearing a hospital wristband, leaned on his father's arm, grateful that his life had been spared, and that the Anonymous had been stopped before they could cause untold havoc. From that day forward, stories about Rocky circulated throughout Anantha Hills. People spoke of the dog's courage and how his instincts had unraveled a vast conspiracy buried beneath the graves. As the city moved on and rebuilt, they carried with them the lesson that vigilance and loyalty, whether from a trained officer or a devoted canine, could safeguard an entire community. In time, the renewed cemetery looked much like it always had, tranquil and silent under the coastal winds. Yet, everyone who passed through those iron gates felt a sense of security, knowing that it was watched over by a dog whose bark had once sounded a warning that saved countless lives. And so, on quiet nights, when the moon shone just right over Anantha Hills, you might still see Rocky on his rounds, his ears perked, eyes scanning the headstones, always ready to protect. After all, heroes never truly rest. They stand watch so others can sleep in peace. Do you want to own a smart dog like this? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can notify you of the latest stories.